ready to dive into something really different today. We're unlocking the secrets of Carl Jung's Red Book.
Ooh, the Red Book.
This manuscript has fascinated people for decades,
Yeah,
and we're going to try to figure out why.
I'm excited.
It's a look into Jung's own, self-experimentation with the unconscious.
Right, and it's not like he was working in isolation either.
Okay, so set the scene for us. We're talking like the early 1900s.
Yeah.
What was going on in Jung's world that fed into this?
Well, think about it. It was a time of incredible artistic experimentation, intellectual ferment, you know?
Yeah.
And Jung, he's right there in the thick of it.
Yeah,
You've got people like Alphonse Mater, he's a close colleague of Jung,
okay.
and he was captivated by the visions of the painter Ferdinand Hodler.
Interesting.
He even published a whole book on Hodler's visions. So you can see how art and psychology were intertwined even back then.
So there's this creative energy in the air, right? It's not just people sitting in labs.
Oh, absolutely not. It's dynamic. It's pushing boundaries.
Yeah. And Jung wasn't just dabbling. He was knee-deep in psychological theory at the same time.
Oh, totally. I mean, we see letters from 1915 back and forth with Hans Schmid
Wow.
about psychological types, how those types shape our worldview. Really groundbreaking stuff.
It's like he has these two tracks going, this deep dive into himself and then these complex theories.
And it wasn't always easy for him.
Oh, I bet.
He grappled with intense emotions, fear even, during this self-exploration.
Yeah.
And to cope, he actually turned to yoga to help him stay grounded.
That's fascinating. She shows how intense it was for him.
Absolutely.
This wasn't just theoretical for Jung, it was deeply personal.
Exactly. And out of that intensity, that struggle, that's where the Red Book is born.
It's almost like this physical manifestation of everything he was going through.
Exactly. Like imagine him grappling with these powerful visions, these images bubbling up from his unconscious.
Trying to make sense of it all.
And he talks about this period, months of wrestling with these visions, and then suddenly, over 3 nights, the words just pour out of him.
Wow, really?
He called this text Septem Sermones ad Mortuos, the 7 sermons to the dead.
7 sermons to the dead. That sounds, I don't know, kind of ominous.
It does, doesn't it? It makes you think, who are these sermons for?
Right, like what is he trying to tell these dead?
And that's the beauty of it. It's open to interpretation, but you can feel the weight of it.
Oh, definitely.
This wasn't just some writing exercise. This was profound.
This was him grappling with these huge concepts.
And within this text, he's outlining his psychological cosmology.
So like a description of the universe, but from a psychological perspective.
Exactly, precisely. Not planets and stars, but the psyche itself.
Interesting.
And central to this cosmology, there's this figure, Abraxas.
Okay, I've heard of Abraxas, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Right, so Jung describes him as this god figure, but not in the traditional sense. Abraxas represents this primal force, encompassing both creation and destruction.
So good and evil, all those dualities.
All of it, wrapped up in this one figure.
It makes me think of the shadow self, that part of ourselves we often try to hide.
That's a great connection because Abraxas really shook Jung's foundations.
How so?
Well, he was raised Christian, a more traditional upbringing. And here he is encountering this force that defies easy categorization.
Not fitting into those neat little boxes.
Exactly.
Makes you realize how our own personal cosmologies are always evolving too, right?
Absolutely. And for Jung, Abraxas was pivotal for developing one of his most important concepts, the self.
And not just our ego, right? The self is something bigger.
Way bigger. Think the totality of who we are, conscious and unconscious, all of it.
That deep inner core, connected to something beyond us.
Exactly. Where do you think he got that idea?
I mean, he was so well read, but maybe Eastern traditions?
You got it. He was fascinated by Hinduism, that concept of Atman Brahman, the individual soul, being part of this ultimate reality.
So the self isn't just some individualistic idea, it's about connection.
Precisely. But he also drew from Western thought, Nietzsche in particular.
Like the Übermensch from Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
Exactly. That idea of pushing beyond limitations, becoming the fullest expression of ourselves.
That resonates with me.
And that's a great way to think about Jung's self, too. It's not something we're born with, complete.
It's a process, right? A becoming.
Yes. Integrating everything, even those shadowy parts.
So how does this all connect back to the Red Book itself, its structure?
Oh, that's a great question. It wasn't written all at once.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's a culmination of years of work, a tapestry of his experiences and insights.
So what are the different threads, so to speak?
It's like a 3-part journey. First, you have the draft, containing those early fantasies, those raw visions he was grappling with.
Okay.
Then there's scrutinies picking up where the draft left off, but deeper introspection.
I see. So each part builds on the last,
And finally, the Red Book itself, most polished, visually stunning part.
like the culmination of his journey,
Exactly. All those years of exploration poured into this illuminated manuscript.
a progression, experience, understanding, expression.
And within the Red Book, he introduces us to some really fascinating characters, each embodying different aspects of his psychological model.
Like who?
Well, let's start with Salome. She's a fascinating figure. She embodies a different side of Eros, the life instinct.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
So Eros, in Jung's system, represents our drive for connection, creativity, pleasure.
Those are all positive things.
Right. But Salome, she's often seen as a temptress, but Jung sees her as something more nuanced.
Challenging those traditional interpretations.
Exactly. And alongside Salome, we encounter the prophet Elijah,
Okay, that's an interesting pairing. Why put them together?
because they represent this interplay of passion embodied by Salome and wisdom, symbolized by Elijah.
Two sides of the same coin.
Precisely. Two forces constantly interacting within us.
And it's through navigating those tensions we grow.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another intriguing figure, Izdubar.
Izdubar.
Yeah, based on Gilgamesh, the Mesopotamian hero.
Oh, right. The one who went on that quest for immortality.
Exactly. And for Jung, Izdubar embodies this struggle with the limitations of knowledge.
Trying to understand the universe, but bumping up against our own limits.
It's like that part of us that craves answers, but can only go so far with reason alone.
Which makes me think about how Jung always emphasized balancing reason with intuition.
Absolutely. We need both.
Logic and feeling, all part of the equation.
Right. And through these encounters with Salome, Elijah, Izdubar, Jung challenges traditional religious frameworks.
It's not about rejecting spirituality, but finding a more personal understanding.
Exactly. One that speaks to the human psyche's complexities.
That search for meaning is something so many people still resonate with today.
Absolutely. And a powerful example of this struggle is one of Jung's most vivid dreams, a dream about a map.
Oh, the map dream. I remember reading about that. It's so symbolic.
It really is.
Yeah, what is it about that dream that makes it so powerful?
Well, it gets to the heart of Jung's process. He starts by describing this really dreary setting, people huddled in raincoats, everything's kind of gray and oppressive.
Like the landscape of his inner world at that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Heavy, uncertain.
And
And then, bam, he has this vision of incredible beauty, almost otherworldly, like a sudden burst of light.
so it's this stark contrast, darkness, and then
And it's in that contrast that he seems to realize something really important.
what's that?
That even in those dark moments, in the struggle, there's still this capacity for beauty, for transcendence.
Like a glimmer of hope.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's there that he seems to grasp the true meaning of the self.
Okay, so how does he connect those two things, the beauty and the self?
He realizes that the self, that center within us, is the source of orientation of meaning, like a compass always pointing us in the right direction.
That's a nice way to put it. The self is our inner compass.
Right. He even says, and I'm paraphrasing, the center is the goal and everything leads us back to it.
Powerful stuff. And that's what makes the Red Book so relevant even today, right?
Totally. It's not about taking everything literally, but connecting with those universal themes Jung was wrestling with.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Confronting our shadow selves, questioning our beliefs that search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic.
Those are things we all deal with, no matter who we are.
Exactly. Jung's journey, it's like an invitation for us to go on our own.
To do our own inner work.
Yes, to find our own compass, our own center.
And that brings us to a quote from Jung that I think wraps things up nicely. What someone says can be very much or very little, thus examine his life. What do you think he meant by that?
It's a good question, and to me, it means we can't just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk.
Action speaks louder than words.
Right. Jung could kept his experiences to himself, but he chose to share them, to maybe light the way for others.
To inspire us on our own journeys.
Exactly. So don't just read about the Red Book. Let it inspire you to create your own, metaphorically speaking, of course.
Live a life worthy of examination.
I love that. Live a life full of exploration, questioning, growth.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Carl Jung's Red Book. It's a journey that challenges us to confront the depths within, to question our assumptions, and ultimately to find that center that allows us to navigate life's complexities with more awareness and purpose. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep living your own unique story.